Hey guys, Brent Boyer from Adams. So let's talk divorce. I wanted to talk today about divorce and custody cases and what goes on with long distance parenting time. So long distance parenting time is basically going to be setting up parenting time with your kids. You're separated or divorced and one of you is living out of state, or that's the plan, one of you is moving out of state. So I wanted to talk about what that looks like when you set up parenting time with children that live more than a couple hundred miles away. Usually out of state, of course, and what that looks like, what you could expect, what's typical, if there is such a thing as what's typical, what's reasonable. So, not every county like we're based in Metro Detroit, not every county here has a published schedule of what they recommend for out of state or long distance parenting time. But one of them does. So for example, St. Clair County, which we do some practice in, has a published schedule, and that schedule involves things like spring break, winter break, other school breaks during the school year. If the child's not of school age, you probably would still follow some of these breaks as just a way to divide up parenting time and a way to set up vacation, some dedicated time with the child. So the St. Clair County recommendation is to alternate these breaks, alternate spring break, alternate Christmas break. Their recommendation is to do 5 weeks in the summer, which is probably written to mean half the summer. I think for most schools, the time off that they have, at least in the northern part of the country, is going to be around 10 weeks off, so then 5 weeks would be half the summer. So they don't recommend every break with the non-custodial parent. They're not recommending that, if you're the one, if the kids are living full-time with mom, they're not saying that dad would get every break. They get every spring break, they get every Christmas, they get every midwinter, they get they get the entire summer. It's not saying that. Their recommendation is half the summer or 5 weeks and alternating breaks. So, the key to that is to look at your child's school calendar. Again, even if they're not school age, you still would look at a school calendar as a guide for what days are off and when your community has weeks off and when they don't. So you'd want to look at your child's specific school calendar, because they could easily have other days off you're not aware of. They could have a whole week off you're not aware of, especially if you get into southern part of the country out west or someplace farther from Michigan. They're not going to tend to be as similar to us. The farther away you get, the more they're going to probably have different schedules than we do as far as time off and when the kids do not have to be in school. And then one of these topics to consider with long distance parenting time is phone calls. What's a valid amount of phone contact? Of course, it depends on the age of the child, because phone calls with a 2-year-old, obviously that doesn't work. But assuming you have a child that's an appropriate age to talk on the phone with you, that's one way to stay in touch through phone calls, FaceTime, any kind of video conferencing, whatever it is you're going to do. You'd want to have that as part of your court order. How frequently are you going to talk to them? Is it every day? Is it a couple times a week? And what's the duration of those calls? If I'm going to talk 3 times a week, is it for a half hour or 10 minutes or whatever it is? So you want to get all that locked down, so then you know what you can count on with contact with the child, assuming that they're going to live out of state. And really, this whole discussion, this may affect whether you're going to agree to someone moving out of state in the first place. You want to know, okay, what's that going to look like? When am I going to see them? It's not going to be every other weekend, if they're 500 miles from here. So you might have 1 weekend a month. You might just stick to school breaks. You might look at, okay, Christmas break is really almost 2 weeks, so maybe I get 1 week, the other parent gets another week. You might look at the entire summer, or, I've seen them do a schedule. We had a client one time where he wanted the entire summer, but we ended up letting the mom have the first week after they're out of school and the first week before they go back. That way there's some transition time. They don't finish school and the next day immediately they're off to, out of state with dad. So then that still gave him a good 8-9 weeks with the kids for the summer, but it gave mom a couple of transition weeks, and that made a lot of sense. And then you could alternate the breaks, or maybe it makes sense that every year is spring break with dad. Maybe that's reasonable. So you want to cover that. Another category to look at with out of state, with long distance parenting time, is transportation. How's that going to work? Are you going to split the transportation? Are you going to meet halfway? Is this driving? Is it flying? Is it some of each? Is it you only see them when they come into town, or are they flying to you, or you're going to there? So you want to cover all that, cover the expenses, how that's going to be shared. Are you paying half? Are you paying the whole thing? Are you the one doing all the transportation? So those are some thoughts. I hope that helps, some ideas on long distance parenting time and how to create an out-of-state parenting plan and some guidance, at least from one county, of how all that works. Thanks.